This unusual story I heard at the station from a stranger, and this story and this village will remain in my memory forever. It is the end of February. Winter is not going to retreat. A strong snowstorm is raging outside. The frost penetrates to the bones. Curled up from the cold, I run into the station building. Try to find a free place at a table, because my train was mercilessly delayed, and sadly realize that there is almost nowhere to sit. Only at the table by the window there is a modest place, opposite a very sad man. "Are you free?" I ask, to which the man nods affirmatively and continues to stare out the window. I sit down across from him, take off my gloves, warm up. The man continues to sit. He obviously doesn't want to talk to me, although to be honest, I don't like empty conversations either. We sit like this for a long time. People come and go. They hurry somewhere on their usual business, but we stay at this damn station waiting for the train that will take us away from here. At some moments, I notice on the face of my neighbor in misfortune irritation, mixed with small notes of anxiety. And finally, he begins to say, "When is she coming, huh?" says the man irritably. "Are you late?" I asked, noticing a certain desperation in his voice. "No, I'm not late." The man replies, "I'm running. I'm getting out of here." I took a new look at him. A light of interest flashed in my eyes. He was a middle-aged man, maybe in his mid-40s, very thin and obviously not quite healthy. He kept fingering the collar of his worn and somewhat dirty black coat, kept looking around, and from time to time took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes as if tired. He noticed that I was interested in his last sentence, took a flask out of his pocket, took a sip of something warming, silently handed it to me, but I refused. "You know, I'll never see you again," said the stranger, sniffing his sleeve. "I'll never find a more perfect interlocutor. Maybe it's my fate. Maybe it's you I have to tell everything to at this station." And here begins the story of the stranger, which I will reproduce from memory. Try not to forget anything, to give you everything that I now have and that lies heavy on my soul, a heavy stone of uncertainty and darkness. My name is Ivan, but it doesn't really matter. A long time ago, I ran away from the big city, from the bustle and a lot of people, in a very cozy village. I wanted to change something in my life after the death of my first and only wife. Actually, so I ran away. And now I am not sure that it was the right decision. Our village is small, consisting of 23 houses, which includes my house. Not far from this province, near the approaching forest, our settlement has been standing for many, many years. It's not thriving, but it's not going to die. It never will. I know that for a fact. We all knew each other in the village, lived happily, friendly, and never thought that someday something will change, that someday we'll turn the page of tranquility, behind which there will be a real madness, which is impossible to think of. Recently, we began to be bothered by one of our neighbors, Dmitri. He was a very respected man, worked at the university, an honored teacher. He lived with his wife. He was already under 60, his wife too. In general, he was no different from anyone else. We talked to him often, spent Fridays together. By himself, he was a very good man, could listen and tell something interesting about science. But a year ago, we had to gather the whole village at the funeral of Dmitri's wife. She died of a serious illness. There was no chance, unfortunately. "Well, you're it. Come in, if anything. We'll talk," I said then, when we were standing in front of the cross of his wife. I, as no one else, understood him. I was once in such a situation myself. Without friends and acquaintances, it is not easy to come to terms with the loss. "Ivan," he said quietly, "talking won't help." Dmitri was completely different now. He shut himself away, and from now on I saw him only in the morning, when he went to work, and in the evening when he returned from work. A couple of times I came to him, tried to talk to him, to comfort him, but unfortunately it did not work. So soon Dmitri stopped going to work. Now I saw him only in the store, and all the rest of the time he was in the house. But it wasn't about him now. It was about his dead wife. Exactly 40 days had passed since the death of Dmitri's wife. It was a quiet winter evening. Everyone was about to go to bed. And at about 11 o'clock in the evening, something happens that absolutely everyone but me believed in. The ghost of Dmitri's wife appears. I go to bed, fall into a wonderful dream, and suddenly the dream changes dramatically. Something bad, frightening, and terribly interesting. I have a nightmare. As if I am walking past a cemetery. It is evening. A snowstorm is driving me. I hear some faintly discernible voices among the wind gusts. Voices from the side of the cemetery, if anything. So I keep walking, speeding up, and suddenly someone behind me says my name, quietly. But I heard it clearly. I stop. Panic sharply pierces me, because I recognize the voice. It was Maria, Dmitri's wife. I turn around and see her in front of me. Yes, that's her. She, translucent, wearing the same clothes she was buried in, stands among the trees and just stares at me. I see a strange panic in her gaze, and suddenly she starts to speak. "I'm not staying with you." I almost recoiled, not realizing that it was a dream, and shaking with fear, I answered her that she should come to her husband to say goodbye. But why should she come to me? I will come to him and to everyone, but I will not stay. Maria answered and disappeared, vanished among the trees. And that's when I woke up. You understand, I never believed in these 40 days. But then, lying in bed after this nightmare, I could not come to my senses. It was so clear, so real. But I didn't believe it. But in the morning, everything changed. Today in my dream, Maria came to say goodbye. Said that she would not stay, said my neighbor, sitting on the bench. Her friend answered her. "Go away. How can it be?" Me too. By the cemetery, among the trees. She said she'd come to everyone. I guess she was right. I was shocked. How is that possible? I questioned everyone. And you know what? Everybody dreamed about her. Everybody, you know. And she told them all the same thing. I'm not staying. Dmitri, you already know everything, right? I asked my acquaintance when I went to him that night to tell him my nightmare. I thought he would be surprised, happy even, but he was not particularly happy. I know, the neighbor replied with a sigh. She did. But you know, she speaks without understanding, without realizing anything. Sometimes, you know, I tell her, let's go and buy you a phone, a good new one. And she refuses. She says she doesn't need it. Well, then we come to the store, we buy it, and then she can't tear herself away from it. It will be the same here. Dmitri's words sounded strangely in this emptiness, and the half-darkness of the evening, scattered, turned into something bad, into some strange hint, which was so creepy that it sent shivers down my spine. What do you mean by that? I asked, and my voice shook a little. It's going to be okay, Ivan. Go home. It's late. Dmitri patted me on the shoulder and began to send me away. Just as I was about to cross the threshold, I froze. From the semi-darkness of the house, I heard a loud creak, as if someone had stepped on old boards rotten from time. I stopped abruptly. It was like a downpour. I turned around and saw my neighbor's face, which was far from frightened. The neighbor was not frightened. He just looked at me confused, and once again said that I had to go. Already sitting in my house, I couldn't put it all together in any way. The atmosphere of night gloom began to envelop the village, and to climb deeper and deeper into me too. There could be no one in Dmitri's house, but there was someone there. Maria didn't visit anyone else in her dreams, but we wouldn't even dream of peace anymore. Dmitri will continue to behave strangely, avoiding people, and the village began to spread rumors about the soul of Maria, who has not found peace. Neighbors would begin to notice strange squeaks of snow in the yard at night, would say that they saw a strange figure in the semi-darkness of the empty streets, a figure very similar to the dead Maria. And at some point I would see it all. It was evening. Pensively I sat in my house, thinking about Dmitri's wife, and about him, trying to calm myself down and to keep away strange mystical thoughts from me forever. It didn't work. My worst fears came true very soon. It's about 12 o'clock at night. Almost everyone is asleep, but only a strange picture is drawn with Dmitri's house. It seems to me that the door of his house is slightly ajar, quietly, frighteningly. And then it seems to have opened, as if nothing more happens. But in a minute I see a figure, barefoot, in a dress that treacherously resembles the very one in which Maria was buried, stepping on the snow that has just fallen. Fuck. I say. I stand up. I look. Yes, shit. I see a woman who looks a lot like Maria. She walks quietly, shuddering with every step, across the yard, reaches the gate, opens it with a creak, and walks down the barely lit street. I don't fully believe it yet. What I see doesn't inspire confidence, but what else can I trust? Very quietly, down the road, steps Maria, stopping every now and then, looking around. She is getting closer and closer, along with the primal fear and horror. Madness comes over me, overwhelms me. My heart beats as if it will burst out of my chest and roll into the grave, but she is still walking, quietly, but purposefully, like she's choosing something, or someone. She's closer. She starts opening wickets, goes into other people's yards, goes to the windows, looks in them for about a minute, moves on. And then my wicket creaks. Violently, vilely. A ringing fear creeps in. I move farther away from the window, forgetting that I hadn't draped it, but it's too late to approach. The snow creaks. A drumbeat echoes in my head, and then I see her. Outside the window, Maria appears. Dead. It's her. I'm telling you, only sort of alive. Her face is slightly blue. The circles under her eyes are almost black, and her eyes are greenish, almost glowing bright. They look around my house, stopping at me. She looks directly at me. Her mouth stretches slightly in a smile, exposing yellow teeth, frozen in that state. She raises her blue hand and begins to run her fingernails along the window, and it's as if her face is frozen in one expression, unchanging, craggy already. Maria, I suddenly say, not knowing what to say next, but I don't have to say anything, for in response I hear what I already knew. You will talk to Mary in the other world. Don't you dare call me that, came a grim voice from the yard, which I had heard for the first time. Rough, masculine, scary. The something quickly jerks its hand down, scrapes across the glass, turns, and walks away with a crunch. And I hear it mutter the same phrase. I'll come back later. I'll come back later. That night lasted forever for me. Without sleeping a wink, I wait until morning, walk resolutely toward Dmitri's house, and knock on the door. Dmitri walks leisurely. I hear his footsteps. I hear mutterings. Displeasure. What have you done, you old idiot? I greet him with a question from the doorstep. I ask the question quietly, so it wouldn't hear me. Dmitri understands me, squints, grabs my sleeve, and drags me into the house. Nobody. You hear? Nobody. He repeats, not letting go, dragging me further. It's impossible to tell anyone. I found the right. I did everything. Everything worked out. Maria doesn't communicate with me yet, but she's already walking around the house. It's a miracle. It's not only walking around the house. It's not only walking around the house. I answer, I want to hit Dmitri for such pranks, but he has already brought me to the door to the room, opened it with a creak, and in the room, against the wall, is an empty coffin dug out. On the bed lies Maria, sleeping. I pull Dmitri back, take him out into the yard, and yell at him. Are you stupid or what? You're an academician. You must have brains. Tell me, where are your brains? Dmitri laughs. He's happy. He can't believe he didn't get Maria back. Shiz, I'll wake her up, you'll see, he says, goes into the house, and I very quickly run to my place. Close. I do not need it. Met already. I had enough. In spite of Dmitri's entreaties and requests, I told everyone everything, and I didn't care if they believed me or not. I immediately packed up, took all my things, went here, and I'm waiting for that damn train that will take me far away from here. The stranger finished his story, took out a flask, drank some more, offered me again, and this time I still agreed. I realized that maybe the person sitting across from me was an inventor or maybe mentally ill, but for some reason a part of me didn't want to believe it. "I have the keys," the stranger says, pulls out the keys to his house, and holds them out to me. "I won't need them anymore. If you want, take them and check." I refuse. The dispatcher apologizes for the inconvenience, announces that the right train has arrived, and the stranger stands up, extends his hand to me, and says goodbye. "Your dead must be let go, or other people's dead will come. Remember this, you can't disturb the dead. These games don't end well." He leaves. I keep thinking about it, waiting for my train, which comes next. I get up and notice the keys on the table. The stranger had left them for me after all. Almost 2 years have passed since then. At times, I remember that stranger and his story, and I still can't tell if it was true or fantasy. I tried to find information about that village. I found that very Dmitri. There really is such a person. Or rather, there was. Almost 2 years ago, he died. There was even an obituary on the Institute's website. The strange thing was that he died a week after the stranger's story. It didn't say what he died of, and I can't find out. I also found a strange-looking article in the local news. They said that people go missing in the neighborhood. Who the hell knows if the disappearances are connected to this village and what happened to the rest of the villagers? I could check. I could go. I still have my keys in the top drawer of my nightstand, waiting for the time to come, but it's not going to come. I'm not going to take any risks. I'd rather stay alone with my questions, for I mustn't disturb the dead, neither my own nor strangers. Otherwise, I won't be able to ask questions in this world.